Your retirement, you're going to be facing many potential complexities, some of which you may not even be aware of. We can navigate these complexities. We can help you to avoid these potential pitfalls, especially with the one-time irrevocable decisions about how to take money out from the pension or even from Social Security. It begins there, but it goes in depth in terms of looking at your entire financial situation.
The information provided here is for general informational purposes only and should not be considered an individual recommendation or personalized investment advice. The information in this material is not intended for tax or legal advice. Please consult a legal or tax professional for specific information regarding your individual situation.
Good day. Welcome to another installment of The Money Doctor. My name is Neil Gendreau. I'm a certified financial planner. One of the things I thought would be useful to discuss would be concerning some of the major decisions you might be facing as you retire. And obviously, a lot of these decisions, they're extremely important because they're going to dictate the rest of your life. And a lot of the decisions that you make revolving around Social Security, pensions, a lot of those decisions become irrevocable. So what we want to do is to kind of put things in context and try to define what is good financial planning for retirement. You just don't want to be doing this off the cuff. And so I'm going to take you through how I work with clients to be able to go through this process in a more efficient way. So one of the most common questions I'm faced with from clients and even prospects of the general public, it's a very common question. And the $64,000 question is, how much do I need to retire? What some people don't realize is that that's going to be different for each individual. It's going to depend upon many factors, including your lifestyle, which is defined by, what you might expect to spend throughout your retirement. It's going to depend upon inflation. We don't know exactly what inflation will be, but we do know that inflation will occur. So what you might need to spend today, you might need to spend actually a lot more on an inflation-adjusted basis, let's say 20 years from now. And so what we need to do to figure all this out and to define whether you're in really good shape to retire is to put these items on paper, including your sources of income, which, most often include Social Security. For some of you, it might also include additional pensions. Some of you might actually expect to work on a limited basis throughout your retirement, and that's fine, but there are implications with that too. But then again, people concerned about running out of savings. And so that's where portfolio management becomes a very important factor. We need to be able to kind of calculate what to expect for withdrawal rates. And depending upon that, what we need to do is to select an investment strategy that optimizes the return that you need while trying to minimize the level of risk that return might incur. So in other words, if you invest too conservatively because you're worried about losing money, you might not have enough of a return to generate the savings that you need, to generate the income that you need from your portfolio. On the other side, a too aggressive approach might actually put you on the wrong side of that volatility when it comes to retire. And as we'll see, the timing of withdrawals will affect the portfolio just as well as the expected volatility during those times. So that can work against you. So what we're trying to do is to find the best balance. And overall, what we want to do is to provide you with some recommended steps to maximize your long-term income, to minimize your income taxes, and to reduce the risk of running out of money, quite simply, which is what most people are looking for when planning for retirement. So one of the first steps in terms of defining your expected sources of income, many people are eligible to collect Social Security benefits based upon their prior years of vesting from work. And for most people, the amount of Social Security that can be collected, obviously, it's going to depend upon your past earnings history, but it's based upon a number that's calculated on your normal retirement age, quote unquote. That number is 67 these days for most applicants. But of course, a retiree can decide to take their Social Security earlier or later, even up to age 70. And the difference is that the longer you wait to take payments, the more the monthly payment will be. And there's typically an annual increment of payments between the ages of 62 to age 70 of anywhere between 7 to 8% per year. So I think that misleads people quite often, because the natural instinct is to think to yourself, I want to maximize my Social Security payment, so I'm going to wait for it as long as I possibly can. I think that's very short-sighted thinking. And the reason why is because people aren't considering the lost income they have prior to when they decide to take Social Security compared to when they may be eligible for vesting. So there's an opportunity cost for deferring Social Security payments to longer periods. So in other words, you could take Social Security as early as age 62 if you're currently retired. But it's going to be roughly only 70% of what the normal retirement benefit would be at age 67. So you have 5 years of taking a reduced benefit payment. If you were to work out the math, in most cases, that's going to amount to $100,000 over that 5-year period for most applicants, where if they decide to defer it, they're not getting that money. And in order to qualify for the larger benefit and having to wait that many years for the larger benefit, you're sacrificing a lot of money in the meantime that could be used to be able to help subsidize your actual expenses. So that's what opportunity cost means. It means you're giving something up for the greater benefit later. It's not free. You're going to get less payments for the rest of your life. You're going to get fewer payments. Those payments may be larger, but you're missing the payments up front. And there's an opportunity cost that means that you're not using this money while you could. And where's that money going to come from? If you're not taking Social Security, it means that you're going to have to draw more against your investments. So the increased withdrawals from your investment portfolio during the early years, if you're worried about not running out of money, well, that doesn't really support or endorse your concern about running out of money. It actually helps to accelerate you to run out of money because you're taking it sooner than you need to. And the reality is that all pensions, including Social Security, they're merely actuarial estimates, which means it's based upon life expectancy. So based upon the averages, it's designed so that the net result is not going to give you any more lifetime payment the longer you take it. It's going to give you the same lifetime payment over a contracted number of years. However, no one knows how long they're going to actually live. Life expectancy is a gamble. So in order to break even on taking the later payments, it may take not only years, but even possibly decades to achieve the justification for taking the payments later versus taking them now. As they typically say, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. So that's why most times I try to advise clients to take their Social Security benefits as soon as they are eligible once they're retired. And that is normally starting from age 62. Even though you're receiving less, you're getting payments for a longer period of time, and you're more likely to get something rather than nothing. What happens if unexpectedly you pass away between the ages of 62 and 67? Well, that means you never get your Social Security payment. You're not getting back any of the money that you put into the system during those years that you were working. So here again, a bird in hand is worth two in the bush. Take your money as soon as you can. The financial terminology behind this is that the present value of a dollar is always more valuable than future value of the dollar, which is how pensions, once again, are calculated. That's why they give you more later, because you'll be getting the payment over fewer years. So it doesn't help you. It kind of harms you if things happen unexpectedly to compromise your life expectancy. So my common recommendation, although it's not the same for everybody, obviously, but most times it's better served for the retiree to take their Social Security payment sooner. Now, there are exceptions to that. And one common exception is that if you're retired early before normal retirement age, but you're working still part-time because you want to keep active or busy, or you want to pursue some sort of alternative career that is something that you like better or something that you want to do, those are all fine reasons to continue to work. But if you're still working, it's more likely that you wouldn't take Social Security until you reach the normal retirement age, which is 67. And the reason behind that is because before normal retirement age, if you make a certain amount of money, in this case, anything over $23,400 for the year of 2025, your Social Security benefit is reduced by $1 for every $2 above that annual earned income limit that I just mentioned. So if you don't work part-time, even if it's a modest sum of income, it's going to be more likely than not more than $23,400. So in cases like that, it's probably more thoughtful to be able to defer your Social Security until either A, you're no longer working at all, or B, you reach normal retirement age. Once you reach that normal retirement age of 67, suddenly there's no longer any limitation to how much Social Security that you can receive, even if you're working to any degree. You could be earning $100,000 a year, $200,000 a year. Take your Social Security, have no reduction. But God forbid you take it sooner, they're going to reduce your payment in most cases. So that would be something to avoid. And that would allow you to defer your payment and also maybe potentially increase the benefit by more years vested into the system and more contributions paid into it. But the caveat to that is that on the offhand, you made a mistake. And let's say you decide to file for Social Security benefits early, and then later you found a part-time job that you wanted to do and you made more than that $23,400 limit, then any reductions that you received before normal retirement age would be paid to you later at or after normal retirement age. But, still, it's not a very bright way to go about taking your Social Security if you can't get your hands on it and spend it now. So in that case, defer it, keep vesting more years and more dollars into the system, and potentially increase your benefit for later. So another source of potential income for many retirees may include a pension. It could be either a public pension from a state or a local municipality, or it could be a private pension from a publicly held company. But in many cases, many companies these days are offering fewer and fewer pensions. A lot of them have been terminated because they're more expensive to maintain. So not as common as they used to be. However, they still exist, and that still poses some questions of whether how to take either type of pension once you do decide to retire. So most pensions, as I mentioned, are public pensions. State and local governments are the most common. And the types of pension payouts usually include some form of annuity. What an annuity is, it's a guaranteed stream of payments that last at least the rest of your life. And specifically, that type of pension payment that you get a lifetime guarantee that's paid to you and paid to you only for the rest of your life, it's called a lifetime pension benefit. However, most public pensions offered by state and local governments, as well as private pensions, are aware that, many people are married, they have dependents and other people they need to take care of in the event of their death. So in most cases, they do allow one pension beneficiary to be able to receive continuing income, potentially for either the rest of their life, or in some cases, even for a certain period of time as a minimum. Normally, the amount of pension benefit that the survivor receives, usually a spouse, it's some fraction of the lifetime benefit. Could be 100% of the lifetime benefit, or it could be 75%, or 2/3, or half. And these are the different options that you'll have to select from when you retire. So which do you choose? Obviously, each pension option, if it has a survivor benefit, is going to be less than a full lifetime to any particular pension applicant because it has to cover 2 lives instead of 1. And so this is the dilemma. How much pension income is necessary for either one or both of you in the event of your death? One of the things to consider in selecting these various pensions with the different payouts is although some pension benefits may have a guaranteed payment for a certain amount of time, could be lifetime benefit with 2/3 of that benefit to the survivor for 10 years. Many pensions, if not most pensions, with survivor benefits do not have a guaranteed payout over a specific number of years, which means that the payments may only be limited to life expectancies. So what happens if both of you pass away sooner than you expect to live? Well, that's good for the pension company that's managing your pension benefits, they're kind of clapping their hands, no malice intended, because they're paying out less money over time. If, like, you and your spouse have an accident that's fatal, you die together, and that happens, let's say, 5 years into retirement, there's no way you're going to get the same amount of money as if both of you had lived to a full lifetime expectancy. So in many cases, most pension payment options that come in the form of some annuity with a lifetime payment to the original pensioner and some beneficiary has what's called a substantial risk of forfeiture, which means that, all that money that was accumulating in your pension to pay one or both of you for the rest of your lives, both of you die too soon, too bad, that money is gone. So obviously, both you and your spouse hope to live as long as possible. Pension company has factored that into the equation already. They're fully expecting that. So they protected themselves by offering the benefits commensurate with your life expectancy. But there's no guaranteed period of time over which those payments are made. If they're only paid in a life expectancy manner with no period certain guarantee, then it's very possible that you're not going to get much out of that pension value. Now, state and local pensions have a equivalent lump sum value. It's not really an equivalent. The lump sum value of that pension basically only represents what you contributed into the system over the years at a nominal interest rate. But with many private pensions, there's a lump sum equivalent that you could also withdraw rather than taking a lifetime annuity or a lifetime annuity with a survivor and get the money fully up front. And that amount of money is the actual actuarial equivalent of the amount that they expect to pay out over the rest of your life, over the rest of both of your lives. So what does that mean? Well, if you have a lump sum payment option to your pension, which represents the full lifetime value of the pension, and you're able to take that in a lump sum, that might be a preferable alternative to taking the annuity payment. And you might be saying to yourself, I don't need all this money now. I'm looking for income. Well, fine. Here's what you do with that lump sum. The lump sum can be transferred into a traditional IRA account that allows you to continue to defer the income taxes on that value. So let's say instead of taking a $3,000 per month pension payment over the rest of your life, you have the choice of getting $400,000. Rather than taking the $3,000 per month over lifetime, you take the $400,000, you transfer it to a traditional IRA. That transfer is done tax-free because you're not in direct receipt of the money. It's a pension rollover. So it escapes taxation until you actually start taking money out of the IRA rather than the pension. What's the benefit of doing that? You avoid the risk, the substantial risk of forfeiting the value of that pension. That's what we're most concerned about, is getting the most out of your money. And so with a lump sum transfer to an IRA, you have income tax deferral until the money is withdrawn. But most importantly, it gives you a ton more flexibility over your ability to take money out when you want, as much or as little as you need, and you're able to actually take that balance and manage it in a way that's most conducive to getting the return that you're looking for to subsidize your income. But you have more choice. You have more choice over the withdrawals, whether to take a withdrawal, when to take the withdrawal, how much to take. And of course, we can withhold the income taxes that might be due on that withdrawal as well, just like the pension would. But by having control over the money, you have control over what you spend. You also have control over having the money managed in a way that is most conducive to meeting your risk and return profile that helps you to avoid the risk of running out of money. So in other words, we're able to take this money, instead of having a pension managing it for you, we're managing it from a professional standpoint, but based upon our understanding of what your financial situation is, how much money you need to withdraw, what the tax implications might be, and how to invest that money most efficiently for the expected return you might need over your life to keep that money as intact as possible for as long as you need it. You also have control over the beneficiaries. You do as a pension as well. If you select an annuity, you could take, you nominate a spouse, but you can nominate with an IRA not only a spouse, you could nominate children, you could nominate a charity. So it gives you more flexibility about how that money is dispersed after you're passing. And that can be done on a testamentary basis once you're gone, or even better, while you're living, if you have charitable inclinations. The IRS allows a special provision where you can withdraw up to $105,000 from that IRA, donate it to charity, and have it excluded entirely from your taxable income. So in addition to having family as beneficiaries, you can nominate a charity as beneficiary to your IRA. It can be transferred after your death. It also has special tax benefits while you're living. If you want to make a charitable donation from your IRA, you can withdraw up to $105,000 from your IRA to be sent directly to the charity of your choice and have that withdrawal completely exempted from income taxes. That privilege begins at age 70 and a half, and also the amount of the withdrawal qualifies towards your required minimum distributions. However, nothing of the like can be done from a pension plan or a qualified plan in that regard. So instead of having a pension that controls your money, tells you how much you're going to get for the rest of your life, it's going to give you the same payment each year, regardless of what inflation is, regardless of whatever money you might actually need. By withdrawing the pension as a lump sum transfer into an IRA, allows you to decide how much money to withdraw, when to withdraw it. You can also take additional amounts out or stop making withdrawals. There are other things you can do too that you can't do with a pension. We'll get into that later. But also the pension funds that are transferred to the IRA can be managed more consistently with your overall needs as it relates to giving you the money that you need when you want it, and manage it from an investment standpoint where we give you the best possibility of making that money last as long as possible. So as with company pensions, you don't really have any investment choices with pensions whatsoever, which is one of the limitations of pensions is the inflexibility of them. Meanwhile, almost all of you have probably been contributing to some type of retirement plan at work, whether it would have been a 401k, 403b, or Section 415 deferred compensation as such, that allow you to accumulate additional money other than Social Security or your pension that might apply in anticipation of retirement. And with those types of qualified accounts that I just mentioned, at least you had some investment choices. Now, that's all well and good, but what happens when you retire and now you need to start taking money out of those company retirement plans? Well, it becomes a lot easier once again if you take the proceeds of those retirement plans and for the sake and purposes of control, flexibility, investment management, you can roll over those balances within your retirement plans into an IRA. Could be a traditional IRA for any amounts that you paid into pre-tax, or it could be even a Roth IRA for any amounts that you paid into on a Roth basis for any of these retirement plans. But the difference is that by transferring funds to an IRA, when you need money, you don't need to call the 401k, the 403b, the 415 provider every time you need to draw a few $1,000s out of your portfolio. Because instead of that, we can set up a monthly systematic distribution plan that sends the money that you actually need from your IRA account into a personal checking account. So that's simply a lot more convenient for that purposes But most importantly is that if you've been accumulating money in these plans for any appreciable amount of time, those plan balances could be quite significant. If you have limited investment choices, you're not going to be able to diversify your money in the same way as you could with a IRA instrument that will give you multiple times the investment choices that you could possibly imagine compared to your 401k. Now, you can also substitute the advisor's management of these funds, and people like me who are certified financial planners, we have the ability to conduct what's called discretionary trading over your account, which means that if you're looking to have this money professionally managed, the IRA is obviously the best way to do it. Now, the irony is that a lot of people don't even realize this, but when they do, they say, well, it's going to cost me more money to be able to roll over my IRA because of the investment fees. Well, that might be potentially true. I don't discredit that observation whatsoever. But the differences in fees are probably much less than what you think they would be, because what most people don't realize is that their company retirement plans also have investment fees by the people who are managing those funds. No one gets paid for free. They're all doing work. All these institutions need to have some source of income. And so they charge fees on your institutional accounts too. So if you're going to pay a fee, you might as well pay a fee where you're getting some benefit out of it. You're getting more investment choices. You're getting more control over the money in terms of when you can withdraw the money, how much you can take, the convenience of having automated deductions paid into your checking account on a monthly basis without having to call somebody each time that you need to take money out. And all this adds up to a much more conducive way to consolidate your funds and have them professionally managed by someone who's staying in touch with you to be able to monitor your situation, to make adjustments, and most importantly, to manage the portfolio during different types of conditions financially, whether they be financial conditions that you face or what's faced by the markets, but all consistent with an overall plan that's designed to help to achieve the goals of not outlasting your money. We want to make sure the money lasts as long as possible with prudent investment management. I mean, can you do this yourself? Maybe you can. But even if you do, you're not going to be able to have as many options with a company retirement plan to do it with. So if you're looking for some help, this is the most convenient and possibly, given the value received, most cost-effective way overall of achieving these means. And in many cases, a lot of times we take a look at, with your retirement plan, we're doing a feasibility estimate, and we're looking at what it takes for you to retire, how much money you need, and I'm doing a very in-depth insight into your situation so I can give you highly qualified advice. So if you're looking for that, for many people, a rollover to an IRA type plan is probably the best move for most of my clients, whether it be from their pensions if eligible, but especially from the company retirement plans, because that's where most of your money probably lives. And this is the money that you're using to live off of. So we don't want to make any unnecessary mistakes with it. We want to do what's right. We want to do what's prudent by you. So another factor that plays very significantly into your retirement planning is looking for ways to minimize income taxes. Now, unlike some of the other topics that we discussed, where these decisions that we made regarding Social Security and pensions are basically irrevocable, we have much more flexibility with how to manage income taxes when you retire. And these decisions are basically made on a revolving basis from year to year, depending upon what's going on. In fact, the whole essence of a plan is to be flexible, because we know that particularly changes may occur with you financially for what you might need. You might have certain emergencies come up, or changes to your health, or a desire to maybe help kids out during rough times. Could be innumerable amount of changes that happen. So what we try to do in terms of retirement planning is to put you in the most flexible position to be able to accomplish your goals and to be able to have some supervision over that process. So as these things do change, someone like myself can help guide you along these adjustments by being in tune with your situation, having discussions with you, and making the best decisions possible. And we're trying to give you the best likelihood overall of accomplishing your objectives throughout your retirement, even as things might change for you. So another factor to that is looking at ways to reduce taxes. And this is something we might look at annually, but we want some foresight behind it too. And the biggest factor in terms of income taxes during retirement is most often income taxes on retirement distributions, the ones that we've been discussing, aforementioned just now with the IRAs and rolling over monies from one plan to another. You typically don't encounter tax situations until you take money directly out of the plan and have those payments paid directly to you. So here's the thing. A lot of people I work with who are financially very successful, who saved a bunch of money, who are in really good shape to do what they want during retirement, well, sometimes that forces people to encounter other problems. You get what I call rich people problems. And specifically is that a lot of times most retirees who have most of their investment value tied up in things like qualified retirement plans and IRAs, regardless of whether or not or how much money you're taking out of these plans, beginning with age 73 in most cases, you have to take out a certain amount of money as a minimum to be able to make sure that those withdrawals are allowing the IRS to collect income taxes from you. And that may not sound fair, but it is what it is. And what a lot of people don't realize is the possible trajectory of those events based upon their financial situation. So if you're in a situation where you have ample retirement assets, specifically ample retirement assets in the form of pre-tax retirement dollars from either qualified plans or IRAs combined, you might find yourself suddenly at age 73 facing the prospect of having to take out a lot more money than what you were expecting, and having those additional withdrawals bump you up or escalate your income tax bracket. And it could also escalate, believe it or not, the amount of money that you pay for Medicare Part B, which is normally a fixed cost for most people. But what a lot of people don't realize is that suddenly you have a forced distribution at 73, which could be a few or even a few $100,000 a year or more. That large distribution is going to put you into an incremental tax bracket that may be much more than what you had paid previously in other years when you were taking out less money. So is there a way to know this in advance? Well, this is why we make projections with a financial analysis. We try to estimate what those required distributions might be beginning at age 73 versus what you might actually need to take. And also comparing tax brackets with those intervals. What tax bracket you might be in when you retire, first off, versus what tax bracket you could be facing if all of a sudden there's a huge bump based upon a required minimum distribution from an IRA plan. So here's the thing. The idea is that if that tax rate differential is significant, you might want to consider finding ways to declare more of that income from deferred IRA sooner than waiting. It's like sometimes it doesn't pay to defer Social Security. Well, a lot of times it may not pay to defer IRA withdrawals either, whether or not you need the money, because the implication could be much higher taxes later than you had expected. So the way the income tax brackets progress is there are different rates assigned based upon different levels of taxable income, whether you're single or married. There are different tables for each, but the income tax brackets nonetheless are the same. That everyone faces for the IRS is you have a 12% income tax bracket, 22% bracket, a 24% bracket, and then, oh, look, there's a huge jump to the 32% bracket and beyond. Now, in addition to that, with incremental amounts of income that you declare in your tax return any given year, you might be facing what they call income-related monthly adjustments imposed by Medicare, which also exacerbates the expenses that you're paying. So how do we minimize this potential problem? We don't want to leave it like a ticking time bomb waiting to explode at an inopportune moment. We want to be proactive by trying to recognizing this in advance and taking steps to make adjustments to be able to alleviate the potential effects of large distributions later. So when we can foresee this, what we try to do is a process called maximizing your lower income tax bracket. Some clients might actually be in as low as a 12% income tax bracket, and it might pay them to consider taking additional taxable IRA withdrawals before they're forced to take withdrawals at the 22% rate, or for those more likely to be in the 22 to 24% tax brackets as they retire, consider taking larger withdrawals sooner to avoid the 32, 35% rates and the additional monthly adjustments for the Medicare expenses that are due. So what we want to do is to make careful calculations on this. And of course, the calculations can't be guaranteed to be fully accurate because we know that, like anything else, things change, especially income tax laws, as they relate to the amount of tax rates that might be applied to your situation now versus later. We can't guarantee the tax rates later will be the same as they are now. They could very easily change. But we want to make at least some leading assessments based upon what we do know to avoid the problems associated with what we don't know later. So how do we look at recognizing income sooner if it's appropriate to consider doing that? Well, the most popular way of recognizing income taxes sooner for the purpose of avoiding taxes later at higher rates, potentially, is through what's called a Roth IRA conversion. So what that involves is taking an amount that you have in your IRA and converting it into a Roth IRA account, the amount that we expect that we can get away with declaring in a lower tax bracket that you might face later. So what happens with a Roth IRA, how it differs from a traditional IRA, is first and foremost, anything that's converted or within a Roth IRA account, there are no required minimum distributions of the owner or even a spousal beneficiary, and no withdrawals are required until that balance is transferred to the next generation in most cases. There are exceptions to that, but generally speaking, there are no required minimum distributions on Roth IRAs. Furthermore, is that assuming you're already age 59 and a half, after 5 years, there are no income taxes due no matter who withdraws money from that Roth IRA later. It could be you, could be your spouse, could be your children. Regardless, after that period of time of 59 and a half and 5 years, no income taxes are payable because you've already paid the taxes. But what we've done is by paying the taxes sooner and isolating it into the Roth IRA, we're allowing the Roth IRA proceeds to grow, also tax deferred, but also pay out tax-free rather than having to take that money out later by anyone and having them pay more taxes. Taxes have already been paid. The downside is, where do you find the money to pay the income taxes on a Roth IRA conversion? Well, in most cases, they have to come from either cash or other investments. So you might have other investments in, let's say, a taxable brokerage account that you may have accumulated on the side, or it might have come from company stock that might still be company stock, or you might have repositioned over the years with different investments. But the problem is that most people have only so much cash on hand. So if you're looking to convert a significant fraction of your IRA, it's going to deplete a lot of your cash, or it's going to force you to liquidate other investments that could be taxable. So that compounds the tax liability on the conversion by forcing the liquidation of taxable assets, such as individual stocks, for instance, or exchange-traded funds or mutual funds. And these taxes will be paid as mostly long-term or possibly short-term capital gains. Not on the whole amount, but only the gain. But still, it's more taxes to be paid. So it's an irony. And you can't really pay the taxes from the IRA itself, because if you use the IRA to pay the income taxes on the conversion, the amount that you withdraw to pay the income taxes is also subject to income taxes. And the whole amount of that IRA withdrawal is subject to income taxes, not just a portion. So another alternative to the Roth IRA conversion to declare taxes and avoid paying taxes later, it's not a perfect mechanism. It has its downsides. Nothing's perfect, really. But you could also take the proceeds from an IRA withdrawal, not convert it to an IRA, mind you, but take that same amount out that you would intend to convert to a Roth IRA, and instead of converting it to a Roth IRA, pay the taxes directly from the IRA withdrawal. So you're still accomplishing the objective of paying taxes at a lower rate, but what you do with the proceeds is that instead of putting it into a Roth IRA, you could put it into another taxable account, maybe one that you already own. Now, why would you want to do that? You don't want to take money out to pay taxes to put it into an account that's going to force you to pay still more taxes. That's what we're trying to avoid in the first place, right? Well, here's the thing. Let's say if you have a brokerage account that's invested in a combination of stocks and mutual funds and maybe some bonds or exchange-traded funds, etc. The amount of taxable income on those accounts are limited to the dividends and capital gains on that account. So in many cases on those accounts, you can control the taxes by using investments that don't necessarily trigger a lot of automatic capital gains. And like I said, I'm referring to mutual funds in this case, because mutual funds pay capital gains distributions that you have no control over. But you put into an account where you select instead individual investments, not mutual funds, or specific exchange-traded funds that look like a mutual fund, taste like a mutual fund, but because they're investing in an index, typically don't have a lot of turnover or a lot of taxes. Nonetheless, the dividends and capital gains on a taxable account are taxed at lower rates than from an IRA. We know this as we've already discussed. In most cases, if you're taking money out of an IRA that you don't need to spend, you have really no immediate intention to spend, and that you may never spend, which is typically the case with Roth IRA conversions anyway, is by putting it into an appreciating investment such as a stock portfolio or an exchange-traded fund of mostly investment equities, different portions of the stock market that don't have a lot of excessive turnover. And by using a buy and hold approach, which means that we're trying to minimize trading, we're trying to minimize capital gains taxes on that account, well, most of the total return of a taxable account, it's not going to come from dividends and capital gains. It's going to come from what's called appreciation, just simply the growth of value. So if you have a brokerage account that you create from a Roth IRA conversion, and you start with $100,000, but it grows to $250,000, and then something happens, God forbid, you pass, you buy the farm, and it goes to your beneficiary. Well, the beneficiary no longer has to pay any income taxes on that appreciation. The amount from $100,000 to $250,000 would have had a built-in long-term capital gain of $150,000. But at your death, that deferred capital gain is waived. So now the cost, what's called the cost basis, or what you paid for those investments, increases from $100,000 to $250,000 to the beneficiary. So the beneficiary gets what's called a step-up of basis, which means that if they were to sell investments the next day after inheriting the money, they would pay very little, if any, taxes. Versus if you had sold that same money, you would have paid taxes on the full gain. Wow, that's enlightening, isn't it? That's actually a very good recourse to the Roth IRA, because conceptually, the Roth IRA does the same thing. And so you could achieve comparable results with a taxable brokerage account if the proper investments are made within it that would behave in a similar fashion towards the Roth IRA conversion. You pick a portfolio of individual stocks or exchange traded funds with limited turnover, limited capital gains. You don't expect to sell them because you're buying quality companies and quality investments that hopefully will pay off well for you over the long term, as you might expect the market would. But you get to defer taxes on all that appreciation if you never spend it. Wow, that's the same thing the Roth IRA would have done. So the difference is that you don't have to, unlike a Roth IRA, find other money to pay the taxes and then pay taxes on that too. You can just pay taxes once on the distribution and reduce the amount of income taxes you pay on that balance for the rest of your life. Gives you a lot more flexibility, gives you a lot more control over the investments, gives you a lot more control over your current portfolio. It allows you to get away with as much as you possibly can at the lowest possible tax rate. So to summarize, your retirement, you're going to be facing many potential complexities, some of which you may not even be aware of, unless, until we've had this discussion today, you might not have been aware of many of the ins and outs that I was referring to. But we can navigate these complexities by working together with someone like myself, who is a certified financial planner. We can help you to avoid these potential pitfalls, especially with the one-time irrevocable decisions about how to take money out from a pension or even from Social Security. It begins there, but it goes in depth in terms of looking at your entire financial situation, including your portfolio, how to invest that money most appropriately to be able to match your expectation of hopefully not running out of money with the least amount of volatility. In either case, we want to avoid either extreme, because the extreme of either investing too conservatively or too aggressively might have the same effect. You run out of money one way or the other. We're trying to avoid that through a more thoughtful, organized approach. We want to be able to have the flexibility to deal with changes to your financial situation, to be able to review what happens from year to year, to make those necessary adjustments by meeting in person and discussing them, or even my ability to be able to make changes to your investment portfolio based upon what I foresee on the horizon, being potential problems and navigating through those waters. But most importantly is that by avoiding these common mistakes and inefficiencies or levels of lack of awareness that would otherwise jeopardize or reduce your financial long-term well-being, with prior planning and ongoing maintenance, we can avoid many of these negative results. We can mitigate them, we can reduce them, and we can give you the best possible outcome of not outliving your retirement. A lot of this depends upon me, but even more of it depends upon you having a trust and confidence of working with someone who can give you the confidence that you need to retire successfully. My name is Neil Gendreau. I hope you've enjoyed this video and found it to be informative. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to be able to add your endorsement one way or the other. Gives some algorithmic advantage where this video might be shown to subsequent people based upon the cumulative interest of the public. So the more that you're able to respond positively to this, the more the word spreads for the good of everyone. As before, I mentioned my contact information is below. So if you have any direct questions or comments or points of discussion that you might want to consider having with me in terms of working together, feel free to contact me through those venues. I'll be more than happy to return your query and to be able to move forward with whatever your concerns might be. That's it for today. Please be attuned to other podcasts that will be coming to you on an ongoing basis, similar topics about financial planning that might be of interest for you or interest for others that you might know. This has been The Money Doctor, and I'm Neil Gendreau, signing off. Neil Gendreau, and these videos are not intended to provide specific investment or financial advice, please contact your own financial advisor if you have one, or if you don't, why not contact Neil?